Hey there guys, welcome to the Colab channel. In this video we're going to be creating 4 animations using vanilla JavaScript so we can turn this static website into a more dynamic one. Alright guys, so just to quickly go over the static website again that we're going to be working on. So as you can see, it's not the most terrible looking website in the world. However, when we go over this, there really isn't much interaction at all. So what we're going to be doing, as I mentioned in the intro, is using vanilla JavaScript and the Blender CSS to turn this static one to this dynamic one. So you can see here we've got an animation with a type text. The nav bar is different. If we scroll down, you can see in the About Me section there's a tab section which reveals more content, and in the contact section you can see we just have the icons. So if we click on the icons, you can see it reveal that hidden content instead of just statically showing us the information. So again, these are the 4 animations we're going to be working on. I'm also going to leave a copy of the files for the static version in the description so you guys can follow along. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into it. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to be working on is going to be our header here, or the nav bar, which we're going to be turning into a sidebar where we have a little hamburger icon here that we click on, and it will open up the sidebar and it will show us a text that correlates to the icon of that text. And then we can close it off again using the cross that will be in place instead of the burger icon. Now there's actually only about 10 lines of JavaScript code for this animation. Most of it is actually just going to be taking place inside of the CSS. So I'll just get rid of all of this and we'll just start again. So we'll grab the ID of sidebar nav, which again is just our header here which wraps around everything. So we're going to set the position of this to be fixed, top 0, right 0, because we want it to be on the right hand side. Obviously set the Z index now to 10 so we can see it. We'll set the background color to that light yellow. We'll set the width, say 88 pixels. Then we'll set the min height to be 100%. Let's also add a bit of padding to this, so about 10 pixels top and bottom, 14 pixels on the left and right. Just give it that bit of padding. Also want to put a border on the left of this, so we'll make it solid, 4 pixels, make it the main color. So that's what the sidebar is going to initially look like. Now let's apply some styling to our logo title there, which is just going to be the initials. So we'll grab the sidebar nav ID again, grab the logo ID, and then grab the logo title. So we'll increase the font size of this to about 3.8 rem. Now we're going to need to apply a bit of flexbox to this, just so that when the nav bar does open up, it stays in the same position. It doesn't move with the nav bar, with the sidebar, sorry. So we'll just say display flex, and we'll say justify content flex end, just so it stays in that same position when the nav bar animates. And then of course let's just add a bit of margin to this. So 20 pixels on the top and bottom, 5 pixels on the left and right. So that's it for styling for our logo title there, or the initials, and then obviously just give it that main color. So that's it for the logo title. So the next thing we're going to need to do now is actually include our buttons. So we're going to need to go into the index.html, and then we'll just go underneath the header here, and then we'll just create a button with the ID of toggle, because we're going to need to click on this later on with JavaScript. Inside of that we're going to include a few icons, which is going to be that cross and that hamburger icon. So we'll do the cross first, so we'll just do fa-solid.fa-mark. Oh, I think it's, sorry, X mark. So there's our little cross there. Then we're going to do another one for the hamburger. So this has a class of fa-solid.fa-burger. So there's our little cross and burger. Now I'm also going to include a couple of classes which we're going to be using as reference points in our JS file. So we're going to call this one cross icon, and then we'll call this one burger icon. Again, we're going to be referencing these classes in our JS file. Now you can see them there, so let's head back into the started CSS and give this some styling. So we'll say toggle, which is the button element we just created. So we'll give this position of fixed, and we'll say top about 10%, and we'll say left about 6%, and let's give it a Z index so we can actually see this. So I'll say Z index 10. So So you see now it pushes that down about 10% down and then 6% from the left. Now we'll also increase the height and width of these. So we'll say the height, let's make it 45 pixels. The width, 45 pixels. And then we're going to need to be doing some placement here. So we'll say display, flex. And then we'll align the items to the center. Justify content to the center. So that'll center our items. Now we're also going to use transform, translate on the y-axis, -50%, which is actually just going to position the icons a little bit higher on our page there. Then of course we want to increase the size of the actual icons themselves, so we'll say about 22 pixels. Set the cursor to a pointer, so when we hover over this it has a pointer. And then let's just include the colors. So the background color is going to be the main color. The color of the icons themselves are going to be the secondary color. And then let's also give these a border radius of 100%, so it's nice and rounded. And then this is going to be a transition of say 0.5 seconds. So that's going to be it for the styling for our icons there. So now let's go ahead into the index.html and include the icons, which are going to be next to the text, which are initially going to be shown when our sidebar is in this state. So we'll go underneath the span of home, or the text of home, and this is going to be an i.fa-solid.fa-house. Hit tab. There's our little house icon. Then have the next one for the projects. So this is going to be i.fa-solid.fa-folder-open, which is going to be a little folder icon. Then for the about, it's going to be i.fa-solid again.fa-person. It's going to be a little person icon. And then the last one for the contact, which is going to be i.fa-solid.fa-message. Just going to be that little message icon. So let's go back to the style sheet now and start styling this. So we'll go underneath the toggle. We'll do the list items first. So sidebar, nav, li. These are going to have a width of 100%, a height of 80 pixels, and let's put a bit more margin on the top of these just so they're a bit more spaced out. So say 60 pixels. Next we'll grab the icons themselves. So sidebar, nav, icons. The minimum width of these is going to be 60 pixels. The height is going to be 100%, and then we're going to increase the size of these. So we'll say font size 3 rem, so they're nice and big. And then let's just position these in the center. So we'll say display, flex, justify content to the center, align items to the center. And then we're also going to need to give these a border radius when we apply the hover effect on these. So we'll say 6 pixels. Now let's make sure the text and the icons themselves have the same color. So we'll say sidebar, nav text, sidebar, nav icons. We'll add the color, primary color, and then a transition of 0.3 seconds. So they're nice and smooth when the animation runs. Now let's style the text. So we'll grab the sidebar nav, and we'll grab the nav text. This is going to have a font size of 2.5 rem. Make them bigger. We'll set the width of these to be 100%. We'll make them a bit heavier in terms of font weight, so we'll say 500. And then just remove any white space so it doesn't wrap. Now of course we want them to align next to the icons instead of on top of the icons, so we'll grab the sidebar nav again, we'll grab the list items, and then we'll grab the anchor tags, which wraps around the icons and the text. We'll set the display to flex. You can't see them at the moment, but we'll align the items to the center, and then we'll justify content and align this at flex end. So you can see now that our icons are back in the same position and the text is to the left. So I had a transition here, 0.3 seconds. Now I want to put a bit of space between the text and the icons actually, so we'll just say margin right, say 55 pixels, so it gives it that space. Now let's just include that hover effect when we hover over these. So we're going to have one for the actual anchor tags, so sidebar, nav, li's, anchor tags. Apply the hover on this, and we'll just change the background color to that primary color, and then we'll do a couple more for the icons and the text, so they change color to that secondary color so we can see them when we hover over this. So we'll say sidebar, nav, li, anchor tag, hover, and we want to hover over the icon as well as the text. So we'll say color, that secondary color. And when we hover over these, you can see we have that effect now, but just want to increase the height 100% and the width of these to be 100%. So there's that bit of space. It's all messed up a little bit. Oh, we don't have a closing anchor tag. So that's just sorted right out. So that's looking really good. Now all we need to do is hide this text because it's actually overflowing the sidebar there. So to do that, we'll go underneath this bit, sidebar, nav bar, which is wrapping around the text and the icons. And we'll set the overflow on the y-axis. We'll set that to scroll. Oh, it's sidebar nav. So that should get rid of it, but we also need to get rid of this scroll bar here. So we're going to need to go and then include the nav bar, and then grab the WebKit scroll bar. And what this WebKit is essentially just CSS syntax which renders content in the Chrome browser, and as we're using Chrome, we need to make sure this actually renders correctly. So that is why we're using the WebKit, just in case there's a lack of cross compatibility, which in this case there would be if we don't include this. So we'll just set the display to none, and as you can see now we've got our fully styled sidebar there. All we need to do now is just start including the JavaScript and just a little bit more CSS, and then we should have a fully operational sidebar menu. Let's head into the JavaScript now, start writing out our JavaScript. So we'll head into the file. We've got this sidebar animation comment there. So the first thing we're going to need to do is create a variable for our toggle ID, which is the button which has the ID of toggle, which is basically both of these icons. So we'll say const, we'll call this hamburger, and this is what we're going to be attaching the event listener to. So we'll say document.get element by ID, grab the toggle, and then we'll create one for the sidebar. So when this does toggle, the sidebar expands so we can see the rest of the content or the text next to the icons. So we'll just say sidebar equals document.get element by ID sidebar nav, so that ID that we've been using in our style sheet, and then two more, one for the cross icon, and we'll use query selector here, query selector, and then we'll select the class that we included in our index.html. So this has the class of cross icon and burger icon. So we'll do one for the cross icon, duplicate this, and we'll do for burger icon, and we need to include the dot there, and then we'll change this cross icon to burger icon. So that's all the variables we're going to need. Let's now apply an event listener to our hamburger menu, or the toggle, which has the ID of toggle. So we'll say hamburger dot add event listener. We're looking out for a click event. Use an arrow function here. So when this gets clicked, we want the sidebar, which is essentially the whole sidebar here and all of the content inside of it. we want to toggle between a class, so we use the class list, toggle method, and we want to create a class called openNav, which we're going to be styling in a moment inside the style sheet again. Then we'll have one for the cross icon. We want to toggle between a class list again, toggle method, and the class we want to toggle through is cross. And then one more for the burger icon, class list dot toggle. We want to toggle the burger. So as you can see, not that much JavaScript at all. Pretty simple. We just added an event listener to the hamburger menu, which is this section here, the toggle section. And then when we click on this, all of these classes here will toggle between the classes that we've applied to them. So we'll head into the style sheet and then just complete this, so we get our animation to work. So we'll just do JavaScript styling. So first we want to open up the nav when we click on the toggle bar. So we'll say sidebar nav dot open nav, and we'll just set the width of this to be 250 pixels. And then we'll do one for the cross and the burger. So we'll say toggle dot cross icon. So initially we want this to not be showing, so we'll set the display to none, so it just shows us the burger there. And then we'll grab the toggle again, dot cross. So when we click on the hamburger, we then want this to display, so we'll just say block. And then we want to hide the burger when it's been toggled, so we'll grab the toggle again, grab the burger class, and we'll set the display to none. So this animation now should be fully operational. If we click on this, it should open up the nav bar so we can see the text. So as you can see, it's showing us the text, but the animation isn't that smooth. So I'm missing a transition somewhere. So I'm missing it on the sidebar here itself. So we'll say transition 0.5 seconds. Oh, not 5 seconds, sorry, 0.5 seconds. So it's nice and smooth. So now this should be working exactly the same as our demo example. So as you can see now, we have a fully operational sidebar with a toggle menu which has the cross. We click on the cross, it will close the sidebar menu, and it will show us the burger again. So that's it for our first animation. The next animation we're going to be working on now is that type text that we see here in the demo example. So the first thing we're going to need to do is just head into the index.html file and just delete this text here, because we're going to be inserting that text in an array inside of our JavaScript, and then using the JavaScript to show us that text in a type text format. So what we're also going to do here is just add a class, because we're going to need to grab onto this, and we're going to call this type writer text. So we'll head into our JS file now and grab onto this span. So we'll just go underneath our first animation there, and we're just going to put in here type writer text animation, and then we'll just create a variable to grab that span we just created. Just call this type writer text. So we'll enter the document, say dot query selector, and then we'll grab that span. So again, that is type writer text. So just to double check that is correct. Yep. So after this, we're going to need to include all of that text that we're going to be using. So we're going to insert all of that inside an array. So we'll just call this const text array equal an array, and then the first word is going to be web developer. Second one is going to be web designer, and then lastly we have tutor. So as we saw in our demo example, this is the text that's going to show when we have our typewriter animation. So the next thing we're going to need to do is just scroll down a little bit, is create two more variables which we're going to be using as reference points to either increment or decrement from. So the first one is just going to increment the array index to access all of our elements inside of our array here. So let and call this text array index. We'll set this to 0, and the next one's going to be for our character index. So we'll say let char index equal 0, And again, this is just going to be a reference point for our functions so that we can increment from this or decrement from this in each of our individual characters inside of this array here. So again, we get that typewriter animation. From here now, we're going to need to create two functions. One of the functions is going to be our type function, type out the text one by one. It shows us the whole word. And then we're going to have another function which is going to erase each of the letters one by one, so it gives us that typewriter effect, and then it jumps onto the second element, does the same thing, and then jumps onto the third, and then restarts back to the first element in our array. So we'll just say const, say type, just set this to an empty arrow function at the moment, and then we'll have one more for erase. Now, before we start writing out the code for all of our functions, what I first want to do is actually have an event listener when the page loads, so that this animation will take effect immediately and we won't have to invoke it. So what we're going to do is just grab the document itself, grab add an event listener, then we're going to grab the DOM content loaded, and what this essentially does is just fires off when the initial HTML document has been completely loaded and passed. As soon as the HTML document loads, this event will fire off. So we'll just complete this now with an arrow function, and we'll just invoke the type function. So again, as soon as our page loads here, it'll begin typing our first word here in the array. So we'll just put that at the bottom. So we can just put a comment here saying start animation on page load. So let's go ahead and type out our first word in our text array here, which is web developer. So we'll go inside the type function, and we're going to say if char index, which is 0, is less than or equal to our text array index inside of our text array. So we'll say text array index, which is also 0, dot length, say -1, which let's just log this in the console and just show you what this exactly does. So we'll just log in our text array index. We'll open up the console. You can see it's printing out our first word there, which is web developer. So just to show you guys that's actually working, comment it back in, you see it prints out web developer. That's because we're saying if char index, again, which is 0, is less than or equal to our text array index dot length, which in this case is also 0, and because arrays are indexed at 0, printing out our first word in our array here, which is web developer, as you can see in the console. Now, of course, we don't just want to print out web developer in the console, we want this to print out in our website here. So to do that, I'm just going to comment this out. What we need to do is grab our typewriter text variable, and we're going to change the text content. What we need to do is grab our typewriter text variable, which is our span inside of our website there, and we just want to change the text content to plus equals whatever our text array index is, which as you can see is now printing out web developer, which is our first word in our array in our website here. Now, of course, we don't just want to print out the whole word immediately. We want this to print out letter by letter. So to do that, after our text array index here, we want to grab the char at method. Now, what the char at method essentially does is just return a character at a specified index. So whatever number we put in here, it will return the index of that specific character. So let's just say I insert a number 7 in here. You can see it's giving us the letter E. So if we count from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces count as a character, we land on E. So this is essentially what the char out method is doing. Of course, we don't want to just put a fixed number in here. We want to actually include the char index, which again starts at 0, which is our W there. Of course, we want to increment this, so we'll just say char index plus plus, and then just so it prints off all the letters, we'll use a set timeout function. So this takes in two parameters. First, the function, which is type, and then the length of time, so 120 milliseconds. And as you can see, if I refresh this, it's going to print out web developer, which is the first word in our array there, and it's printing it off character by character. And just to show you guys, if we didn't include that char at method and we reload this, you can see it just prints out web developer 13 times. That's because there's 13 characters inside of this first word here, but we're not printing it off character by character, because as we've seen, what we're doing with this and this essentially now is just we're printing out the first word in our array there, which again is web developer. So it's really important to include char at method, so it prints it off character by character. And of course, the set timeout function just types out this code here 13 times. Of course, as we've just seen, there's 13 characters in web developer here, which includes the white space. So the next thing I want to do here actually after our set timeout is just include an else statement. And inside of here, we're going to have another set timeout function. And this is just going to include the erase function. And then we're just going to set this to 800 milliseconds. And what this does is essentially just the opposite of what we've coded here, where instead of adding individual characters, it will start erasing them one by one. Now, of course, we haven't got anything written in the erase function here, so this isn't going to take effect just yet. But we're going to now go into the erase function and create that. First, get rid of this console log. So we'll go inside our erase function here. And the first thing we're going to do is just include another if statement. And we're going to check if the chart index is greater than 0. So when it's greater than 0, we want this condition to take effect. So we're going to grab the typewriter, which is our span. We're going to change the text content. And we're going to set it equal to our text array index inside of our text array again, which is 0. Now, instead of using the char@at method here, we're going to be using the slice method. And what this will do is basically just extract the section of our array, which in this case is going to be our first word, which is web developer. And that's going to allow us to manipulate that word. So once all the characters have been typed out, it will then start to erase the characters one by one till it gets rid of all of them. So we're going to be doing that with a slice method. So inside of the slice, this takes in 2 parameters, the start and the end. Now, because this is extracting a section of our array, essentially creating a new array, which is our word web developer, we want this to start at 0 because we want to show the whole word. But the second parameter here is where we want this to end. Now, where we want this to end is actually in the negative numbers below our 0 here, because we want the whole word to be erased. So essentially moving the characters to -1. So we'll just put in here char index -1. Now, once this types out, you can see it actually gets rid of the R because we're not decrementing the whole thing at the moment. But you can see what we're trying to do with the char index here, because when this increments all the way to W, we also don't want W to be showing. So we put it in the negative numbers, so it erases the whole word. From here, of course, we want to erase each individual character. So we'll just set the char index to decrement, so -. And then to complete this, we just want to set a set timeout function of erase. And we want this to be 60 milliseconds, so it's nice and fast. So this now should be working completely. So it will type out the whole word, and then it will start, it erases the whole word character by character. Now, once this all takes effect, so it's typed out and then erased character by character, we want to jump to the second word in our array, which is web designer, and then this will take effect again. So it types out the whole word, erases it, then jumps to tutor, and then we want the cycle to start again, so it prints out web developer, and so on and so on. So to do that, I'm just going to create an else statement. Inside of that else statement, we want the text array index to increment. So this will jump us onto that new word. And then we also want to include an if statement here. So we want to say if the text array index is greater than the text array dot length, so the length of the whole array, what we want to do when that happens is actually just revert the text array index back to 0, so it starts again. So again, what we're doing with this else statement is that once the word gets erased, we want the text array index to increment by 1, so jumping onto the next letter. And then once that text array index is greater than or equal to our text array length, we then want this to revert back to 0, so the whole process starts again, and it prints out all of our words in our array character by character, as well as erasing them. Just to complete this now, we're just going to grab the set timeout function. I want this to be type, and then we're going to say about 800 milliseconds, and this typewriter effect should now be working. So we've got our web developer there, erases it character by character, web designer character by character, tutor, and then it should revert back to web developer. And as you can see now, the typewriter effect is working exactly as it should. All we need to do now is just include the little flashing icon that you see here, so just to give it that little extra bit of effect. So let's head into our CSS, and we are in the hero section here for this bit. And I think this has the class of typewriter text. So we'll just copy that and just paste that in here. Now we're going to need to use position relative here because we're going to need to position the actual effect on the pseudo element of after. So we'll just say position relative, and then let's go underneath this and say typewriter text. We'll say for after, and then inside of here just have content. We'll say position absolute, and then let's just give this a width of about 4 pixels, and then let's actually give it that background color so we can actually see this. So you see it there. Now obviously we need to position this a bit differently, so what I'm going to do actually is just stop the animation so it's a bit easier to see. So let's just comment this out so we can see it there. So let's position this from the top, so about -5 pixels, and then let's also give this a bit of margin on the left just so it's not touching up on the A there. So say about 5 pixels, see what that looks like. Maybe a bit more, let's try 7. Looks pretty good. So that's all we really need for that styling. Now to get that blinking effect, we're going to be using an animation. So we'll say animation, the animation name is going to be called blink. It's going to be about 0.8 seconds. It's going to be infinite, so it's continuously running, and let's actually give it an ease in out. So let's go ahead and create that keyframe. So we'll use the @keyframes keyword. Identifier is the blink. So from 0% to 100%. We'll have the background color to be secondary color, and then from about 40% to 50%, we'll have the background color to be transparent. As you can see now, so it's having that typewriter effect and it's blinking. Let's go ahead now and uncomment all this out so it has that full effect. And as you can see now, it's working exactly the same as our demo example here. So it's got that nice blinking effect. It's also typing and erasing the characters individually, so it gives us that typewriter effect. And I think it looks like a pretty cool animation. So that's going to be it for the second animation. So to get started with this animation, we're actually going to need to go into our HTML and change this around. Because if we take a look at the index.html, you can see we just have a box which has our content in there, but of course we want to have more than just this content. So we're going to be creating those tabs in our index.html first. So we'll go into our About Me section, and we'll just get rid of all of this content here. So inside of this, we're first going to have our div which is going to wrap around all of our content. So we'll just call this tabs wrapper, and then inside of that we'll have an unordered list. So it's these 3 sections here that we're going to be able to click on and reveal more content. So we'll create a UL, and we'll give this a class of nav tabs, and then we'll just have an list item which is going to have the class of tab, and this is going to be me. Duplicate that 3 more times. Obviously you guys can include as many tabs as you like, but we'll just have 3 for this example, and then we'll have 1 for hobbies. So there's our 3 tabs there that you can see. Obviously we'll be styling them in just a moment. Underneath the UL we'll then have the actual tab content. So we'll call this tab content, and then we'll have a separate div for each of those tabs. So we'll call this tab panel, and then we'll also give this an ID of tab me so we know what it's for. And we'll just have some dummy text in here. So we'll say lorem, say 40, and then we'll just duplicate this tab 2 more times. And then for that tab, we'll say tab CV, and then tab hobbies. Now let's head into the CSS and apply some styling. So instead of about me content, H2, we'll get rid of all of that, and then we'll just have 1 for the tabs wrapper, which wraps around all of the content. We'll give this a padding of, let's say, 1 rem, and we'll also give this a height of 400 pixels, and it's overflowing at the moment. That's because all of this content, of course, is going to be sitting inside our tabs wrapper And then we're going to have the 3 tabs that we can click on and reveal the rest of this content. So we will sort that out in just a moment, but we'll also give this a max width of 550 pixels, so it never gets bigger than that. Let's actually hide the overflow at the moment. So say overflow hidden. And then let's give this a box shadow of 0 pixels on the X and Y, and then 3 pixels blur, so it wraps around all of the tabs wrapper. And let's make this a darkish grey, so 29323C. So there's our tab starting to take a bit of shape. Let's also give this a border radius about, let's say about 10 pixels, see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And then that should be it for our tabs wrapper. Let's put a comment here so we know. Tabs content styling. Now let's style the tabs themselves. So we'll just say the nav tabs, we'll give them a display of flex. So they're side by side. And then we'll style the actual list items themselves. So nav tabs li. We'll give these a border solid of 1 pixels and give it that primary color. And then give them some padding, say 0.5 rem, and then 1.5 rem left and right. Give this a cursor pointer. Let's give them a bit of margin between them. So let's say about 10 pixels. Let's also increase their font size so we can actually see the text. So nice and big there. Our trusty border radius, about let's say 5 pixels. And then I think the color of the text as well should be that primary color. Now we're actually going to need to include a few more classes as well as some data attributes for our tabs here. So we'll head back into index.html, and then we'll say for the first list item, which is this section here, so me, so it's gonna, this class that we're about to insert is going to highlight this first tab here just to show that this is the content for the me section. And then when we click on the other tabs, we'll use JavaScript to then add the same class to that tab, which will switch it over to the tab that we click on, highlighting which one we've clicked on. So just to show you guys what I mean, we'll go inside the first list item and we'll put a class of active, and then we'll do the same thing for our first panel here. So we'll just say active. We'll go back into the style sheet and just give it some styling. So this now is going to make more sense. So we'll say nav tabs tab dot active. We'll give this a background color of the primary color, and then we'll give this the color of, let's just say white. And as you can see now, the first tab that we applied the class to now has this styling effect, which again is just going to highlight this part of the section. And then when we include the JavaScript now, when I click on the CV or the hobbies tab, they will highlight instead, indicating that we've clicked on them, and then it's also showing the content that they're holding. Now we kind of want to do a similar thing with our content inside of each of the panels. So we're actually going to need to first of all grab the panels and actually just set the display value of these to none, so the content isn't actually showing initially. But for the active class, we do want it to show. So what we'll do is grab the tab panel class again, insert the active class inside of that, and we'll set display of that one to block. So this now should show that first bit of content which we assigned here in our index.html, so for our first panel as well as our first tab here. Now we're also going to need to apply some data attributes to our tabs here inside of our list items, because we're going to be selecting these in a moment when we apply our event listener. So we're going to say data target, and we're just going to set this equal to the idea of tab me, and then we'll just copy this and paste it in each of the other tabs, and then just change it to CV there. And then for hobbies, again we're using the data attributes just so we can select them in our JS file. So let's head into our JS file now and start creating our tabs effect. So we'll just put a comment in here and we'll just call this tabs animation section. So first we'll just create a couple of variables. So we'll create a variable for our tabs. So this is document.query selector. So it's going to select all of the classes that have all of the elements that have this class, which again is all of these tabs here. And we're also going to need one for the panels, so which houses the content. So we'll say const tab content. We'll say document dot query selector all again, and then we'll just select the tab panels, tab panel. So those are the only two variables we're going to need. The next thing we want to do now is just loop through our tabs variable here, so we're able to click on these tabs, which is going to give us the ability to click on different tabs, which is going to reveal more content. So we'll grab the tabs variable, and we're going to be using a for each. Now a for each, as some of you may know, is an iterator predominantly used on arrays, but you can also iterate over sequences which are not arrays. And the for each method essentially just has the same effect as a for loop. So all of our JavaScript now is going to be inside this for each method. So inside the for each, the first thing we want to include is a callback function, and we're just going to insert a parameter of tab, which is going to select each of those individual tabs, and again giving us the ability to show more content. So we'll just complete this with an arrow function. So the first thing we want to do is now grab that tab, which is going to be all of those individual elements, and we're going to apply an event listener to these, and we're going to be looking out for a click event, and we're just going to have an anonymous function. So inside of this event listener, we want to target those data attributes, which again selects all of those tabs. So we'll say const, we'll just call this target. This is going to equal document dot query selector. So it's just going to select that individual tab, and then we're going to grab the tab again, grab the data set, and then we're going to grab the target. So again, essentially what we're doing with this variable here is just selecting these data attributes for each of our list items here, which are our tabs, and we're inserting it inside an event listener, so that when we select these tabs, it will reveal us that content. From here, the first thing we're going to want to do is create a loop, which will select that individual tab and highlight, so we know it's been clicked, because at the moment, if we click on the other tabs, nothing's going on. So to do that, we'll just go underneath our target variable there, and we'll grab the tabs, which is this variable here, which we're looping through, and we're going to loop through it again with a for each, and this is going to have a parameter of t, and then we're just going to use an arrow function in here, and then we're going to grab that t parameter, and we're going to grab the class list, and then we're going to say dot remove, and then we're going to remove that active class. So if I click on this now, you see it actually removes that class, so it gets rid of that styling. Now of course if we click on the other tabs now, none of them have that effect, and of course we want it to highlight the tab that we're clicking on. So we'll just go underneath this, and we'll grab our tab there, and we'll say class list dot add the active class. So what this should do now, if I click on the other tabs, is highlight that tab that we're clicking on, and as you can see, it's looping through all the tabs using our parent for each loop, and then using the add event listener, we first remove the active class, which is applied to our first tab here, and then because we're looping through all of them and we've got an event listener on all of them, whichever one we click now will highlight, indicating that's being clicked on. So all we need to do now is actually apply another for each, just so we can show the different content on each of the paragraphs here. So to do that, we'll grab the tab content, grab the for each loop, and insert a parameter of tc, and essentially just doing the same thing here. So grabbing the tc, grabbing the class list, and then what we're doing is removing the first class list of active, which we applied to our first paragraph here, which you can see there. So we're just removing that from that tab panel. So I'll just put in here active. So again, if I click on this now, you can see it removes all that content because that's the style we gave it in the style sheet. So just refreshing that, and then just to add it on, when we click on any other tab, we'll just grab the target variable, grabbing the target attributes, and we'll say class list dot add and then we'll just add that active class again. So this now should be fully operational, and we should be able to click on these individual tabs, and I've lost count of how many times I've said tabs. So just to show that's working, let's just get rid of some content on the different paragraphs. So we'll just refresh this, and as you can see, when we click on that tab, it shows this bit of content, and then if we click on hobbies, it highlights, and then it's showing this bit of content. So now our tabs animation is working exactly as it should, and we can move on to the last animation, which, if we take a look at the demo example, we click on our content here, so the icon, and it will reveal either a number or an email or our location. So let's go to our project here, and I don't think we actually need to change anything in our index.html, so we'll just go to the style sheet. So just a couple of bits of styling here for the contact info. So what we'll do is just set the height of this to be 0 pixels, and then we'll also set the overflow to hidden, so it's just the icons. Now we actually need to add a bit of space between each of these, so we'll go in the contact section, we'll say margin, say about 30 pixels, just give them that bit of space. And then what we want to do is just have a class for when we click on this using JavaScript, is open up and then reveal that content. So let's grab the contact, and then we'll grab the contact container, and we're going to apply that class that we're going to toggle through, which is in fact going to be all of these. So we'll just call this class is active, and then we want to apply that on our contact info, so it reveals that content. So all we're doing really is just setting the height of this to 150 pixels, just so it goes from 0 and hidden to 150 pixels, so we can see the content. And then let's just make sure this is nice and smooth. So grab the contact container, the is active class again, but instead on the icons, because that's what we're going to be initially clicking on. We'll just set a transition. And we'll just set a transition of 0.5 seconds. So that's all we really need for the styling. Let's head into our JavaScript file now and complete this animation. So this animation is going to work pretty similar to our tabs animation in terms of looping through, but instead of using the for each in this example, we're going to go for the classic for loop. So we'll just put in here a comment quickly, contact animation section, and we'll call this, let's call it contact animation. We'll set it to our document, and we'll say get elements by class name. So it's going to select all the elements with this class name, and that class is going to be contact container, which again is just our 3 elements there. So now what we're going to do is use a for loop to loop through our variable here, or the length of the variable, which in this case is going to be 3. And then once we loop through all of them, we're going to have an event listener to all of the indexed elements, and then apply the toggle method to toggle that is active class we just created, which will then change the height from 0 to 150 pixels. So I'll just show you guys what I mean. So we have our for loop. I'm going to say I is equal to 0 if I is less than our contact animation dot length, then increment I. So this is essentially just going to loop through the length of our variable there, which is all the classes that have the class of contact container, which is all 3 of them. And then inside of that, we want to grab the contact animation, grab the index, which again is each of those individual values of those elements. We're going to add an event listener to this. We're going to be looking out for a click event. We're going to say function. Inside of our function, inside of this for loop, we're going to need the this keyword, which is essentially just referring to our for loop, and then any code inside of that for loop, which in this case is going to be all of this code here, is then going to execute. So we're going to say this dot class list dot toggle, and then we're going to toggle between is active class. This now should complete our animation, so if I click on one of these icons, it will reveal that content, and as you can see, it is revealing the content, but it's not smooth. Shouldn't have added it to the icon there. It should actually add it to the contact info itself. So as you can see now, if I click on this, it's nice and smooth, and our animation is working exactly as it should. We'll actually just add a bit of line height just to separate that. Say about 2.5. Yeah, it looks a little bit better. So that completes our 4 animations. I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you're new, and I'll see you guys in the next video.